Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of CRATV, where we talk about politics, policy, and politicians from a conservative perspective here in the great state of California. So please take a moment, like and share the program so that your friends can join in the conversation. Also, please make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook and on Instagram, and make sure you hit the notification button so that you can get the alerts as soon as we go live on Facebook and YouTube, and you can participate in the live chat as the program is going on. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about today's topic. Now, I got a call about a week or so ago from a local reporter here in the Sacramento area who was asking me a question about a program or a group called the Lincoln Project. That's right, they're called the Lincoln Project. Now, this is a group of, and I use these air quotes intentionally, Republicans who decided that they wanted to come together and, they wanted to support the impeachment of President Donald Trump. Now, this individual came to me because they know that I've been a long-time conservative activist here in the Sacramento area and in the state of California. They also know that I'm an individual who keeps it real when it comes to President Trump, meaning that I praise the good things that I see that he does, and I bring up my concerns over the things that I believe are challenging, which I believe any reasonable individual, should do. So they wanted to know exactly what I thought about this particular program and about their efforts. And before we get into talking a little bit about these folks and exactly who's behind it, I wanted you guys to see the interview in order to help set some context. So here, check it out real quick.
You can barely have a political discussion without passions igniting. Some folks really like President Trump. Others really don't. But there's a new push from some conservatives who say they want him out of office.
By many wonderful Republican leaders.
I can't do this anymore. We're tired of holding our nose and thinking this guy's going to change. He keeps getting worse. So you're seeing the Republican base actually split in two.
That's what Mike Madrid says a lot of conservatives are thinking when it comes to President Trump. So much so that there's a place for their sentiment.
Impeaching Donald John Trump.
They call it the Lincoln Project.
Who came together and realized that Donald Trump represents an existential threat to the country. And we are working to not only see that he is defeated, but also those Republicans who support blindly a Trump agenda are unseated as well. The Lincoln Project is about Republicans talking to Republicans and letting them know that there are a lot of us out there.
Yep, you heard that right. They're Republicans, and they're putting their money where their mouths are with TV ads.
The Trump administration, in its view, broke the law.
The latest one targeting evangelicals.
Have you ever asked God for forgiveness?
Why do I have to, repent? Why do I have to ask for forgiveness?
Their goal is to get them to turn away from what they call Trumpism and even consider non-conservative politicians.
While we're not urging people to vote for other parties, what we are saying is it's perfectly acceptable. It's equally important to not vote for the Republican candidate who is supporting the Trump agenda.
Mike is a consultant for the group that's led by Republican powerhouses like Rick Wilson and George Conway. That's the husband of White House counselor Kellyanne Conway.
I don't give them a whole lot of credibility.
That's what Craig DeLuz, a representative for the California Republican Assembly, thinks of the Lincoln Project.
I believe that they're going to undermine their own interests if they say they're truly Republican.
DeLuz says, at best, the Lincoln Project will only get a majority in the Senate and that they can't and should not push President Trump out of office.
He's cut taxes, he's cut regulation, he's stood up for protecting innocent life and religious liberty. I may not necessarily like everything he says or how he says it, but when I weigh the good versus the bad, he's been good for the country.
When asked about the party split, though, he recognizes the divide and calls for less partisanship.
I think that anyone who believes that Donald Trump can do no right or Donald Trump can do no wrong is in fact part of the problem. And there are some of those in the Republican Party.
Okay, so the Lincoln Project has their work cut out for them. A recent Fox News poll put the president at a 45% approval rating among all voters. And that's an increase since the impeachment proceedings began. The group says even a small decline in Republican support could sway even more voters.
So one of the first things that I wanted to point out about the individuals who are heading up this effort is, first and foremost, that they're political consultants. Now, I, in general, don't have anything against political consultants. I know many people who go into becoming political consultants because they want to make sure that that our values are represented in those who are elected to office. But then there are those who become political consultants and then pretty much become guns for hire. Now, how do you recognize a gun for hire? Well, they generally then start to work for people whose values are inconsistent with what they claim their values to be. Such an example is Mr. Mike Madrid. Now, Mike Madrid is the former political director for the California Republican Party. That's actually where I first met Mr. Madrid. Now, Mr. Madrid, once again, says he's a Republican, and he's one of the few actually in this group that actually still claim being a Republican. But with that, during the 2018 gubernatorial race here in the state of California, there were a couple of Republican candidates that he could have worked for. Unfortunately, that's not what he chose to do. Instead, well, he chose to do this.
There's nobody who believes that a Republican is going to win the governor's office. In fact, most Republicans, myself included, who've spent their whole life in the Republican Party, just understand the reality that that's not going to happen in California. And so while it might be a good move for hopefully Speaker Kevin McCarthy, it's not really good for the rest of those Republicans, especially those in the Valley, who have to live with a governor who's going to be making extraordinarily significant decisions on things like water conveyance and decisions that affect the business community. And so, look, there's a reason why we spent so much time in the Valley. And while I respect Kevin's decision to push the president in that direction, we live in California. We don't live in Washington, D.C. We're going to have to live with the next governor. And the only electable choice alternative to Gavin Newsom is Antonio Villaraigosa, because we all know that Republicans just not going to win the state.
Now, for those of you who have forgotten who Antonio Villaraigosa is, he is the former Speaker of the California State Assembly. He's also the former mayor of the city of Los Angeles. Now, last I checked, and who knows, maybe Mr. Madrid can hit me up on social media and correct me on this, but last I checked, there are very, very few values that Antonio Villaraigosa has expressed through public policy that are consistent with those that we happen to believe as Republicans. I don't believe that he's pro-business. I don't believe that he's for small government. I don't believe that he supports the idea of traditional family values. I don't believe he supports anything having to do with being tough on crime. In fact, I can't think of one particular political issue with which he is consistent with the Republican Party. But, as you noted in the interview, he includes him as the only other quote-unquote viable candidate to support. Mike Madrid is not the only one on this particular list. He's not even the only one from California on this list that is guilty of this. One might take a look at Steve Schmidt. Now, the first thing that was of note about Mr. Steve Schmidt is that, they call him a Republican, but this is an individual who actually left the Republican Party.
My next guest is a longtime Republican strategist who's worked at the highest levels of that party, who just quit the GOP after almost 30 years over the president's immigration policy, specifically family separation. In an impassioned tweet storm last week, Steve Schmidt wrote, "This independent voter will be aligned with the only party left in America that stands for what is right and decent and remains fidelitous to our republic, objective truth, the rule of law, and our allies. That party is the Democratic Party." And MSNBC contributor Steve Schmidt joins me right here. Great to have you here.
Good to see you, Chris.
So first I want to talk about that. The kind of breaking point for you. You've been a never Trumper. That's been clear. You have there's a group of people that I think have very strong views about this individual, this president, his character. And then there's a question at which point that becomes true about everyone in league with him. What was the breaking point?
This president is an autocrat. He is not a small d Democrat. He doesn't believe in liberal democracy. And what we're seeing here every day are 5 behaviors. 1, he incites fervor in a base through constant lying. 2, he scapegoats minority populations, and he affixes blame for complex problems to them and them alone. 3, he alleges conspiracies that are hidden and nefarious and linked to those scapegoated populations. 4, he spreads a sense of victimizations among those fervent supporters. And 5, he asserts the need to exert heretofore unprecedented power to protect his victim class from the conspiracies and the scapegoated populations. Through all of history, you understand totalitarianism. You understand how democracies fall. You will find those 5 behaviors. Now, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, I would argue, and you and I disagree on many, many things, but we are fidelitous to liberal democracy.
So I think it's important that we put into perspective exactly who Steve Schmidt is. He's not only this former Republican who has come to see the light about the Democratic Party, but he's also the individual who ran the failed presidential election of one Senator John McCain. Now, but more ominous to us here in the state of California, this is the individual who ran the re-election campaign for Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, wasn't he a Republican? Well, he ran as a Republican, but then once he got elected, what did he do? He raised taxes, right, on millions of Californians, right? It was so bad that the effort and the push that he did, getting some other, unfortunately, Republicans to support the idea of raising taxes, wound up costing California Republicans the first ever, I call it the super minority in California legislature's history ever. All right. But in addition to that, he also supported AB 32 or signed into law AB 32, which cost California hundreds of thousands of jobs and business opportunities. And by the way, he also supported a gun ban. So I'm only saying that to say, once again, you should be supporting people. If you're a quote unquote Republican strategist, you should be supporting those whose values are consistent with those of the Republican Party. But on top of that, I mean, let's just take a look at this one. This is the reason why I wanted to bring this one is because this isn't the only national figure that's a part of this, but it's the most visible because this is an individual, Mr. Rick Wilson, who was part of a recent effort. And well, let's just put it this way. This is what Rick Wilson thinks of Republicans and those who support President Donald Trump.
And look, he also knows deep in his heart that Donald Trump couldn't find Ukraine on a map if you had the letter U and a picture of an actual physical crane next to it. He knows that this is, an administration defined by ignorance of the world. And so that's partly him playing to their base and playing to their audience, the credulous boomer Rube demo that backs Donald Trump, that wants to think that Donald Trump's a smart one and y'all elitists are dumb.
All right, so I think it can be fairly established that these are not Republicans, or at least if they're Republicans, they're rhinos, Republicans in name only, and likely so that they can make a buck, because that's what political consultants do. Or at least in these cases, they exist to make money, which then raises the question, well, why are these guys doing this? Right? What is the point behind this? Because, see, Republican consultants do things for money, or at least consultants, political consultants do things for money. Here is an effort to produce commercials that are encouraging the impeachment of President Donald Trump. Or are they really?
Hey, Corey Gardner, ask yourself, why are you losing? Why do the polls show you headed for humiliating defeat in November? Because Colorado trusted you to work for us, not Donald Trump. Martha McSally, Arizona rejected you in 2018, and you know why. You were too close to Donald Trump, and you lost badly. Now you've gone full Trump. Again. Senator Collins, you aren't doing the job we elected you to do. You're a senator. Act like it. You work for Maine, not Mitch McConnell. Maine demands independence from our leaders, something we had with Olympia Snowe and Bill Cohen. Don't embarrass their legacy by protecting corruption. We want a fair trial in the Senate. Do your job, Susan Collins, or Maine will find someone who will. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
So here's what I noticed. These commercials were not just attacking President Trump or promoting the impeachment of President Trump. These commercials were attacking Republican senators. They were specifically going after senators, right? They were telling them that they weren't doing their job, that they were puppets of President Donald Trump. All of these various different things, all in an effort to affect the reelection of Republican senators. And Mike Madrid in the interview said it as much as possible. It's not just about going after the president. They want to go after those who support him. They want to undo and undermine the Republican majority in the Senate. That's what their goal is. And they're playing into all of the Trump hysteria in order to push this narrative. Now, the funniest part is that the media is playing right along with it, right? Why is everyone doing these stories on this Lincoln Project, right? That's only raised, what, $400,000 is how much they've raised. Now, mind you, one Trump super PAC, quote unquote super PAC, by the way, $400,000. Can you really call it a super PAC? It's more like a baby PAC. You know, if we're talking national elections, it's more like a baby PAC or a not so super PAC or anyway, whatever you want to call it. It's not a super PAC. But yet, every major media outlet is replaying these commercials over and over and over again. Why? Because it plays into their narrative. See, even Republicans hate President Donald Trump. Well, here's my message. My message to those of you out there who say that Republicans hate President Trump. These individuals that you point to, they may be registered Republicans. They may be at one point in time worked for Republicans. But when your goal is to take individuals who support free enterprise, who support lower taxes, who support traditional family values, who support strong immigration laws, when you seek to undermine those individuals in order to put people in office who want to raise taxes, who refuse to defend innocent life, who will put people on the Supreme Court that do not believe in the fundamental right to keep and bear arms, when you are in fact replacing Republicans with Democrats who you can't even pretend are moderately conservative, then no, I'm sorry, you cannot call yourself Republican anymore. Now, I think that there are a lot of conservatives who in 2016 had their questions about President Trump. And their questions weren't about how he said things or anything like that, but mostly it was about, would he actually govern as a conservative? Well, I think it's pretty safe to say, yes, he has. And so I honestly believe that there's going to be an even bigger turnout in this upcoming election because you're going to have a lot of conservatives who sat on the sidelines in 2016 who now are frustrated and they're angry because President Trump came. He said he was going to do. He said he was going to do what he was going to do, and then he's sought about doing it, and he's been effective in getting a lot of it done. And that all the other folks can do is name call and yell and spew all sorts of vitriol at him. I think you're going to see a lot of those conservatives that are going to step up, and they're going to be active and engaged voters in this particular election. And I think the thing that is going to enrage them the most are these, I don't even want to call them rhinos. They're more like jackasses in elephant suits. But I will just say this. I think that these cut-and-run Republicans, they are the ones who are going to encourage more conservatives to be active and engaged in this particular election, to support the president at every turn. Democrats are 100% correct when they say that the future of this country is in this election. It's in every election, but in particular in this one, because I think it's important that we make sure that people understand that, look, there's a right way and a wrong, there's a right direction, there's a wrong direction for this country. And I believe that economic prosperity, I believe that protecting innocent life, I believe that protecting the fundamental right to keep and bear arms is the direction that this country needs to go. And if it's going to go that way, it's not going to be simply because Donald Trump does or doesn't do or says or doesn't say something. It's going to be because we, individuals, we, the grassroots, step up and encourage him and support him as he supports the values that have made this country great. Anyway, folks, hey, that's going to be it for today's or for this edition of CRATV. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program, letting your friends know about the California Republican Assembly. We are the conscience of of the Republican Party. You guys take care.